Congress in December 1845. He gave a speech describing his goals he hoped to accomplish under his administration. Polk, handpicked by the former president Andrew Jackson, was a president who served during the years 1845 to 1849. Though he was a new name to Americans, he swiftly passed several policies that would help him reach his expansionist and preservation goals for the nation. The significance of his first annual message was that Polk, by describing these goals, established himself as a very active president from the start. His speech showed that he was a president who would put the nation first and would do everything in his power to make America into a powerful nation. This can be seen with his advice to gain new lands in the Southwest, his goals to maintain benevolent relations with foreign nations, and his recommendations to protect the nation's financial interests by modifying tariffs. One of the first things Polk outlined in his first annual message was his goals to acquire new lands in the West and the Southwest. Such was the case with the Republic of Texas. The Republic of Texas gained its independence from Mexico after it underwent its own independence struggle. Texas established itself as a free nation in 1836 and afterwards sought to join the Free Union. As Polk mentioned, even Mexico herself had become satisfied of this fact, and whilst the question of annexation was pending before the people of Texas during the past summer, the government of Mexico, by a formal act, agreed to recognize the independence of Texas on the condition that she would not annex herself to any other power. However, Texas sought annexation from America, but was unable to do so as it would increase tensions between Mexico and the U.S. due to the fact that it would look like America had perpetrated this whole independence struggle in order to gain new territory. However, Polk still advocated for the annexation of Texas into the Union. He stated that America had been expanding bloodlessly for a while, and nothing should stop her from expanding its territories. He states, "This ascension to our territory has been a bloodless achievement. No arm of force has been raised to produce a result. The sword has had no part in the victory. We have not sought to extend our territorial possessions by conquest or our republican institutions over a reluctant people. It was a deliberate homage of each people to the great principle of our federative nation." President Polk is stating that any territorial expansions made by America in the past have been purely bloodless, and its expansions, such as the ones through Florida and the Del Norte, the American people have not forced others to accept its form of government. The people that did accept America's influence wanted to be part of the Union. Polk, when saying this, was referencing the previous expansions that had taken place through his predecessors, such as the Louisiana Purchase made by Thomas Jefferson, a purchase that bought America a vast expanse of land from Napoleon. The bloodless expansion Polk referenced is the Indian Removal Act under Andrew Jackson. The purpose of this act was removing Indians from American territory and relocating them west. Though many Indians died during this relocation, there were no policies made that forced these Indians into such relocation. Polk referenced these past expansions as justification for his own goals of expansion for America. He is stating that America has expanded its boundaries in the most humane way possible, without armed force, so there is no reason for any opposition by Mexico or any other such nations against annexation of Texas, which he ardently supported. This justification made by him is highly reflective of John O. Sullivan's concept of manifest destiny, a phrase he coined in 1845, which meant to overspread the continent allotted by Providence for the free development of our yearly multiplying millions, all under the idea of Anglo-Saxon liberty. This manifest destiny heavily affected Polk's presidency, a concept which he described as the rapid extension of our settlements over our territories heretofore unoccupied, the addition of new states to our confederacy, the expansion of free principles, and our rising greatness as a nation. This idea is also seen in Polk's conquest for the Oregon Territory in the Northwest. Polk's campaign for the Oregon Territory involved a clash with Great Britain and a conflict over how to divide the land. Polk saw this conflict evolve into a threat of warfare with Britain, when the slogan 50-40 or fight was popularized. Eventually, a compromise was struck after Britain lost interest in territory, and land was divided along the 49th parallel with the 1846 Oregon Treaty. Sentiments of this compromise were evident in Polk's address as well. In these attempts to adjust the controversy, the parallel of the 49th degree of north latitude has been offered by the United States to Great Britain, and in those of 1818 and 1826 with the further concession of the free navigation of the Columbia River south of that latitude. The parallel of the 49th degree from the Rocky Mountains to its intersection with the northeasternmost branch of the Columbia, and thence down the channel of that river to the sea, has been offered by Great Britain, with an addition of small detached territory north of the Columbia. Each of these propositions have been rejected by the parties respectively. In his speech, Polk addressed the negotiations that are taking place during the struggle for Oregon. He stated that previously in the years 1818 and 1826, America had offered to divide the land along the 49th parallel, but Britain had refused. Now Britain had proposed the same compromise, but America had refused, claiming that they wanted more. It showed that Polk wanted more than what the conflict offered. The nation seemed to have Oregon fever, and Polk demanded more land to satisfy it. It shows that ideas of manifest destiny and expansion began to drive Americans to crave more than what they were offered, and Polk would not settle for anything less than 50-40. However, to avoid more conflict with a nation as powerful as Britain, America eventually settled the compromise. The Oregon situation revealed a trend with the Americans whenever land is at stake. It seems that foreign influence is very threatening to Americans, and they would do anything to remove this influence from North America. When America acquired Florida from the Adams-Onis Treaty in 1819, James Monroe passed the Monroe Doctrine, which stated that foreign nations needed to remove their influence. The 50-40 or fight slogan is essentially an extension of the Monroe Doctrine. Just as the Americans felt threatened by Spain in 1819, the Americans in 1845 felt threatened by Britain and sought to minimize its influence in America. When Polk mentioned about the annexation of Texas, he acknowledged that relations with Mexico would be affected by the situation. This relationship, as well as U.S. relations with other parts of the world, was another part of Polk's speech. Polk realized that the Republic of Texas' desire to be annexed by the nation resulted in sullied relations with Mexico, and he proposed ways to fix these relations and secure the safety of the U.S. Since that time, Mexico has been, until recently, occupied an attitude of hostility towards the United States, has been marshaling and organizing armies, issuing proclamations, and avowing its intention to make war on the United States, either by an open declaration or by invading Texas. Both the Congress and Convention of the People of Texas invited this government to send an army into that territory to protect and defend them against the menaced attack. The moment the terms of annexation offered by the United States were accepted by Texas, the latter became so far a part of our country as to make it our duty to afford such protection and defense. I therefore deemed it proper, as a precautionary measure, to order a strong squadron to the coast of Mexico and to concentrate an efficient military force on the western frontier of Texas. Polk predicted that Mexico would either formally declare or attempt to invade Texas, and America needed to be ready for either. Polk felt it was necessary to protect Texas from the invasion, as he believed the territory would soon be annexed by America. He said it was necessary to deploy a standing army along the Mexican border to protect the soon-to-be territory of the U.S. His intuition proved to be true, as soon as America did annex Texas in 1846, Mexican army crossed over the Rio Grande and attacked General Taylor's army, killing 16 soldiers and injuring others. President Polk felt as if the war was a result of serious causes of misunderstanding between the two countries that continue to exist, growing out of unredressed injuries inflicted by the Mexican authorities and people on the persons and property of citizens of the United States through a long series of years. Polk felt as if the war was simply a revival of old sources of conflict between Mexicans and Americans, such as issues about slavery and racism, and he sought peaceful means of solving conflict. However, Polk began fully preparing for war after Mexican President Herrera refused to meet with John Slidell, a man sent by Polk to negotiate a peace treaty and purchase the lands of New Mexico and California for up to $30 million. Polk also had expansionist goals in mind with the negotiations of Mexico and was preparing to spend a lot of money to gain new territory. Even the treaty that ended the war, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, was composed of demands by Polk for new land in the West. These events' occurrence, as per Polk's predictions, were quite significant as it established himself as a credible and intuitive leader. Polk's foreign policies extended outside North America too, with his speech mentioning about recommendations to keep foreign nations with Spain mutually favorable. In his speech, he addressed the concerns of unequal docking costs between Spanish ships in American ports and American ships in Spanish ports. By virtue of an arrangement made between the Spanish government and that of the United States in December 1831, American vessels, since the 29th of April 1832, had been admitted to entry in the ports of Spain, including those of the Balearic and Canary Islands, on payment of the same tonnage of about 5 cents per ton as though it had been Spanish vessels, and this whether our vessels arrive in Spain directly from the United States or indirectly from any other country. When Congress, by the Act of 13th July 1832, gave effect to this arrangement between the two governments, they confined the reduction of tonnage duty merely to Spanish ships coming from a port of Spain, leaving the former discriminating duty to remain against such vessels coming from a port in any other country. It is manifestly unjust that whilst American vessels arriving in the ports of Spain from other countries pay no more duty than Spanish vessels arriving in the ports of the United States from other countries should be subjected to heavy discriminating tonnage duties. This is neither equality nor reciprocity, and it is in violation of the arrangement concluded in December 1831 between the two countries. Polk stated that it is unfair that American vessels docking in Spanish ports have to pay less than Spanish vessels docking in American ports. He stated that not only does this action violate the agreement between the two nations set forth in 1831, it is also purely unjust. Polk also most probably prioritized this issue because he was preparing to go to war with Mexico over the dispute of Texas annexation. He could not afford having bad relations with the powerful European nation, as seen with the XYZ affair, a quasi-war that was started with France that involved the impressment of American ships and severe financial costs. America has seen wars and quasi-wars start over trivial matters. Polk wanted to prevent as much conflict as possible to keep the concept of bloodless expansion and thus American values reputable, and secure the finances of America and focus them on what is most necessary. Another point that Polk touched upon during his speech was his goals of financial security for America. During Polk's presidency, in general, many ideals of Andrew Jackson were reflected in his policies and beliefs. He was considered a natural successor of Jackson and even earned the nickname Young Hickory. Polk's financial plans were very similar to that of Jackson's in that he was against high tariffs and advocated for their reduction. The precise point in this ascending scales of duty, which is ascertained from experience that the revenue is greatest, the maximum rate of duty which can be laid for the bona fide purpose of collecting money for the support of the government. To raise duties higher than that point, and thereby diminish the amount collected, is to levy them for protection merely, and not for revenue. As long, then, as Congress may gradually increase the rate of duty on a given article, and the revenue is increased by such increase of duty, they are within the revenue standard. When they go beyond that point, as they increase the duties, the revenue is either diminished or destroyed. Polk, in this part of the free speech, is referencing the tariff of 1842. He was using past tariffs and financial panics as guidelines for his plans, such as the tariff of 1828, or the tariff of abominations, the panic of 1819, and the panic of 1837. The tariff of 1842's primary purpose was to raise the price of foreign goods and imports. This tariff was very similar to past ones, as it was made to ensure that there would be more dependence on domestic goods rather than foreign goods. Polk stated that tariffs need to be capped off at a certain percentage to ensure the most amount of protection and revenue. Anything higher would only result in protection and no financial gains. Polk is recognizing that tariffs are necessary to ensure the protection of American manufacturing, but they also need to be moderated. Polk is stating this goal for the gain of Americans in all regions of the U.S. He doesn't want to see a repetition of the tariff abominations where all regions of the country are affected. He wants to ensure that North gets its revenue and protection with their manufacturing, and the South isn't too affected by the tariff. Polk's presidency was very reflective of the ideals of a typical Jacksonian Democrat. His presidency was heavily influenced by the concept of manifest destiny, the Mexican-American War, and the past presidency of Andrew Jackson. Despite the many obstacles in the way, Polk effectively added large territories to the Union, including California, New Mexico, and Oregon. His first speech to the people on December 2, 1845, was significant because it outlined many of the goals that Polk had for his presidency, and established him as a leader who would hold the nation at high standards. His goals set forth in this speech reflected his yearning to see America evolve into a benevolent and powerful nation, and he accomplished them so well he did not feel it necessary to run for a second term.